Discover connection, awaken sacredness, become empowered. Join us for our show on Blog Talk Radio. Discover your spiritual gifts live.
Welcome to Discover Your Spiritual Gifts Live, show number 2. We are your hosts, Dave,
Vialet,
and Jason.
We hope everyone had a great holiday and is having a great 2019. The center has been very busy with classes, visitors, and clients. We hope you're part of those groups, so come on down and see us. Today, we're having a special guest, Susanah Magdalena. Susanah is a wonderful talent here in the center, and we want to explore all the great things she does. So, Susanah, welcome to the program.
Hi. Glad to be here. This is a fun experience that I'm looking forward to.
Well, tell us more about yourself and your background, because you have a very complicated or interesting background, I'll say.
Well, I come from Texas, and I always say that part of my reason for being here on this planet was to get out of Texas, and not necessarily the physical aspect, but the mental aspect, so out of that Texas frame of mind. And moving around throughout the world has given me an opportunity to explore and to develop, and coming to Colorado was definitely a peak.
Well, great.
We're so glad that we have you, Susanah. Susanah is one of our full-time practitioners here and joined us last year? Tell us about that story. How did you find us?
So Vialet and I knew each other from a number of years ago, but hadn't really stayed in touch. And we had a mutual friend who came to me and said, "Oh, Violet's opening this center in Littleton." Well, I live in Westminster, which Littleton is more of the south part of Denver area, and I'm on the north side, and so it's a good little hop to come here. So at first I was like, oh, Littleton. And then my husband had interaction with Violet's husband, Tom, at a fair, and my husband said, well, here's this woman's business card. You need to go by and see this space. Her husband said to. So I'm like, okay. So I came in and dragged Jason along with me, and here we are.
Still.
Haven't left.
Still.
And not going anywhere.
And we love having both of you, so I'm really thrilled at the fact that you came down and checked it out. I'm thrilled that you brought Jason into the center, and I'm so happy that you both are still here. So tell us a little bit about, Susanah, what you do here in this space.
Well, I do a number of things here. It's been kind of an interesting go. I first started out working here 1 day a month, then I moved to 2 days a month, then 3 days a month, and then Vialet and I discussed me coming on full time. So what that meant me taking a real leap of faith. But I am a Discover Your Spiritual Gifts reader here. And in that, I do often channeled messages. I do tarot or oracle card readings, sometimes both, sometimes neither. Dave has experienced channeled messages with me, and that's been fun. I'm also a practitioner here, and what this means is that I offer private sessions to people who want to come in, and the main thing that I feel like I do is I bring a divine masculine and divine feminine harmony into individuals and assist them in finding this within. And so I do this. I do a number of sessions. I do sessions called Ascension Integration, which Jason has experienced. And just recently, I've developed something that I call Rose Messages and Rose Healings. So Violet's experienced the message part of it, but those are really fun. They're beautiful, and they're giving me an opportunity to go really deep within. I'm also a teacher here. And so I teach a number of different things, some fun classes that are small classes that are just kind of one classes you can take that are fun and interesting and enlightening. But I also teach Kabbalah. Which is, it takes you into esoteric Judaism, which is the mystical part of any teaching. And that's what this does. We go into this. This is a 9-part series, and it's very introspective, and I consider it fun. I also have, along with the Rose Messages and Healings, I've developed or brought back a teaching that I call the Healing of the Rose teachings. I remember a full life from the time of being a young child to being an old woman at the time that Yeshua and Mary, known as the Magdalene, was here on the planet. I remember the healings that were done. I remember how the healings were done. And I remember being the one that developed a teaching for these healings. And so that's what I'm bringing back, and I'm really excited. I've just kind of launched this, and it's bringing me fully into what Jason and I've talked about, and what he refers to as being in your divinity. He discussing that with me a couple of years ago really made me think about what it is that, yes, is my path, yes, is my purpose, but it's more being in your divinity. It's your soul. It's your source of your soul, and knowing who and what you are. And that's what I'm really stepping into and working on being confident about, because it's kind of a shaky little thing at first, but it's exciting.
Well, that's great. I'll talk a little bit about my personal experiences with Susanah. I've known her for a number of years. I've gone through a lot of spiritual development over the past 35 years, and it really accelerated in the last 10 or 15 years. What I found with Susanah is that she is channeled for me with a number of high vibrational beings who are from other realms, and she has been able to adjust her energies to handle that very well. The other thing, too, is I think it's very important for people to understand a couple things about channels. Number one, they really need to be good on their discernment. These days, I'm finding personally, as I do clearing work and work in other realms, that some channels out there are not bringing down the real deal. They don't have the discernment, and they're tying into a consciousness that can look and sound and feel like what they want to channel, but it's not the real thing. And it's more of a cloud of consciousness that's created by other similar channels who are all feeding this consciousness and coming up with an expectation of what it would say, how it would sound, its intonation, its mannerisms, but it's not the real deal. I'm very comfortable with Susanah that she does tie into the spiritual beings that I wish to connect with, and brings through authentic messages. The second thing is accuracy. Sylvia Brown, who died a couple years ago, used to talk about her mediumship and her channeling, and she said, a good day is 70% accurate and a great day is 80% or higher. I've only met a few mediums who really get up above that, but Susanah's work is consistently, it rings true. A lot of mediums and others, when they bring through information or channels or clairvoyance, they talk about getting truth pimples, which is kind of a joking term about some form of physical sensation that there's a validation there. And with Susanah's work, I consistently feel very reassured that the accuracy is very high and the authenticity is very high. So I've had very good experiences working with you.
Thank you. And I've enjoyed working with you. Dave and I working together has really brought me to a different place of understanding what he was talking about as discernment, because Dave works with very, very high vibrational beings. And so to bring these through, I have to be in the place and in the mindset to totally put myself to the side and allow what is in Dave's highest and best to come through, or what is in the collective's highest and best with what Dave is working with and for. So it's definitely been challenging, but it's been interesting, and it has taken me to a new level of understanding who I am and what I'm doing.
Oh, thank you.
Do you channel one, or do you channel different ones? Or, everybody's different. Some channel the same group, some channel a certain individual, some channel many different things. And I've experienced your channels too, and I think they're lovely. So Explain to us a little bit about that. I'm curious.
I always say I primarily channel Mary the Magdalene. She's my main source, but in working with her and also with Yeshua, because when you work with one, you work with the other, either as singular energies or as a combined energy, because to me they are kind of the epitome of the divine masculine and the divine feminine that flows in harmony. So I work with these energies primarily, and I consider them my highest teachers. And in this, I do bring through other beings to other sources. It kind of depends on what is wanting and needing to come through at that time. Again, discernment, that I have to sit back for a minute and number one, trust these teachers of mine that they're only going to allow through what is the highest and best, and to just leave it at that, and so that I don't worry if what's coming in is not appropriate or of a lower frequency. I can really just go with it and allow that to come in.
And it's beautiful. It's very beautiful. So I thank you for sharing those gifts with us.
My experience with Susanah is very different from what's been shared so far. When you get started on the spiritual path, you come across people that are in the right place at the right time to be that person, to be the mentor, or to give you that first break. And Susanah was actually both of those things for me. She was the first one that allowed me into a live reading situation in a fair so that I could try out my skills. We did hide it behind some pottery, but the pottery sold a little bit, and I did lots of readings and kind of never really stopped. That was my first experience of that. And in the process of that, getting to know Susanah and getting her support in so many different ways really helped amplify what I was already working with, opening my mind to possibilities and connecting me to higher vibrations that, while I knew existed, did not have a working relationship with. And as a result of the channelings and a couple of different sessions, I most certainly got some powerful information, along with found out what guides I was working with at the time. And that is a huge part of kicking the doors open, is getting that gap bridged in some way or other. And as a mentor, and both in the spiritual and in the physical world, you've been right there for me in so many different ways. And as a result, we've become very close and good friends, which I will always cherish. She very affectionately refers to us as Twinkies. I think because from moment one we just understood each other and how we connected. So I'll just go ahead and toss that out there because it's going to happen eventually. Susanah has done the same thing for a lot of other people too, and I think that really is a testament to who she is and how big her heart is that nothing is ever inaccessible, and no one is out of the loop. Everybody is included, and Susanah's willing to help everybody, and she makes a conscious effort to be involved in people's growth and their development, and checking in on them and thinking about them and connecting with them. So it's really powerful what you do as a healer, as a channeler, and quite frankly, just as a person on the planet. It's a pretty powerful force to be reckoned with there.
Thank you, Jason. I love collaborations, and I think Jason and I crossing paths was definitely something that was preordained. I have no doubt about that at some point before coming into this life that we made an agreement to cross paths again. We have many past lives together, and I've seen a few of them, and Jason's seen a few of them, and they're interesting. But when we cross paths in a certain light in different lives, we have to look at those and again use that discernment to see what it is that's offering us this life. Well, and to not replay perhaps things that were challenging in other lives, but to bring forth what the connection really was. And in Jason and my case, I think it's to empower one another, because like he talked about, that he feels like that's been part of what he's experienced. It's also been a big part of what I've experienced in being in relationship with Jason. So it's been a mutual benefit for both of us.
I agree, and fun too. And fun.
And he is my Twinkie.
Yeah, and if I can just get your giggle for my ringtone, that's when I'll be the happiest. Yay, my life will be complete.
Well, you'll probably have it after today. Dave can just cut that little section out and go, here you go.
It'll be an endless loop.
Well, it kind of is already.
Well, it's an amazing family here. We become connected and we integrate with each other. And I know from my perspective, I think you and I teach each other a lot. And we support each other and hold space for each other. And I learn from you in your classes, and you learn from me. And I see that integration of what moves through there. And we love to mentor and coach these people. That's what brings them here, that all of us have something to offer them, something to show them, something to teach them. And you're definitely a really important part to the center, and in my life especially. So I am thankful that you're here and glad that you came and that you're still here and continue with us. I've experienced your rose readings, which I could not wait to get your rose message reading. Just the setup is amazingly beautiful. It's a beautiful setup. I watched you as you created that and worked through all those pieces to figure out how you wanted to do that. And I think it's a beautiful blessing to be able to get those rose messages for you, to really connect to those high vibrations. And it's just amazing. I would do that again and again, and I tell everybody, you got to have one of these. You got to get one of these. You got to have this reading. It's beautiful and very sacred, and you know how I love sacredness.
I think it's the frequency of the roses that really brings a sacredness. So in these rose messages that Violet's talking about, the setup is really kind of beautiful. I had a dream. Well, this rose healing information was coming in, but I had a dream one night, and I saw this bowl of water, and it had a gold rim, and there were rose petals floating in it, and I was looking in the bowl, which for information, and that's a form of a term called scrying, where either you look into water or a mirror or into a flame or something like that, and you receive divine information. And I saw myself in the dream looking in this bowl. And so she was talking about the process. So I got to thinking about how this was going to look at what I could offer for people. And so I found these beautiful rose oracle cards that a woman from the UK has created. They're all her photographs. So the vibration of the roses are really intense in each of those. And then we actually, in a session, you'll pull 7 of the rose cards, which there's a holy aspect to the number 7, or a sacred aspect that I consider. And then a petal is pulled from a live rose for each of the cards, either to pull in the energy of that card or to release it, to heal from it, whatever the message is that's coming forward. And then afterwards, it's interesting how those petals on the water, what they do. Sometimes they all stay separate. Sometimes they don't touch. Sometimes a couple of them will stay touched together, and then later another one will move over to it. So the water is still, but to watch what happens with those petals, I can see what is going on energetically with that person throughout the reading. And so that's been very, very interesting. So it's been fun, and it has brought a real aspect of beauty, of divinity in, and those roses have really assisted with that. Thank you, Violet.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. I absolutely do love it. It's a beautiful process.
Oh, that's great. Well, something you have up in your notes, and I've just got to ask you about it because it's just tweaking me up there, is the linkage between Yeshua and Mary the Magdalene and their roots in Lemuria. Tell me about that. I'm just dying in curiosity.
This is something we haven't talked about, have we?
Nope.
No. Well, a few years ago, I started hearing this term, and it was Chielia. And I kept thinking, well, what in the heck is this going to mean? And so a friend of ours that also works out of the space, Brenda Hardwick, she goes, well, you are the Chielia. And I'm like, okay. And so I was sitting back meditating with it, and Chielia is actually a Lemurian term that it translates as key holder, and actually key holder to the lost memories of Lemuria. And so I was like, okay, so I'm going to sit on this. Then when I started really pulling in this teachings that I was talking about, the Healing Path of the Rose teachings, and I was gathering the information together that I had at that time regarding the teaching of the healings, what I was seeing Yeshua and Mary Magdalene going back into their memories and into their connections back to Lemuria, back to that time of harmony, of that time of beauty, of being in oneness with our planet, and trying to integrate those frequencies of Lemuria into the beings that were more natural to this planet. And so I know that that's a piece, and it's that Chielia piece that I'm also hold a key to the memories of the vibrations that they were bringing through in association with the healings.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I love Lemuria, so definitely connected there. So that's beautiful. I would have never thought of that, of them being there. So that's really awesome to bring that through.
It makes sense.
It does, doesn't
It really does
But
make sense.
I hadn't thought of it, though.
And the development and the way that the memories have come back for you, Susanah, really accents that possibility, right? The way that's shown up for you, and for them it showed up a little bit later after they were already teaching, and when it was time to get to the next layer, right? And that's what I've seen you go through. There was that period of time where you were like, what is going on? What am I doing? Where am I going? And you kind of took a break there almost for a little bit while that came up, and then when you opened up about the healing path of the rose and what was coming forward, and remembering that lifetime, which just gives me goosebumps every time we talk about it, that order and that progression really makes sense. That you would recognize that far back as well, and connect that for Yeshua and Mary too. That's very powerful.
And to have the confidence to step forward and to step into this fully, because we've been taught, in this human place that, we're not supposed to toot our own horn. We're not supposed to do this. These beings are up on a higher pedestal than we are. We're just these little peons on earth, the little worker bees. But we're more than that. We're worker bees, yes, but we're more than that. And to step in our authenticity, or our divinity, which Jason loves to use that word, brings us into that element of confidence of who and what we are, and to stand in it authentically without having to apologize or think, oh, why me? And that was the first thing. It was like, okay, so these teachings started unfolding. I didn't tell anyone. I kept it all to myself, because I'm like, well, first of all, they're going to think I'm nuts. And am I nuts? I had to really validate that for myself before I brought it out.
So you figured out that you are, or that you aren't? Which is
yes and no. We're all nuts together.
That's definite.
Well, you're from Texas, so we kind of need to know. We could be in danger here. It's possible.
It could be. Danger, Will Robinson.
Lemuria, Laredo,
Amarillo. I'm just saying.
Yeah, could be. You never can tell. But I think it's that confidence piece to step out in who we and what we are. And I know Vialet and I, like she said, we collaborate on a lot of things and we discuss a lot of things. And she's dealt with that too, with some of the teachings that she's bringing forward. She, sort of kind of shut down a piece of it that is hers. It's a beauty for her to bring forward. And we've talked about this a number of times, of how to stay in our authenticity and to be and do what we're called to,
Feel
regardless.
worthy, right?
Worthiness is a huge piece.
Right? Are we worthy to do this? Should we be doing this? And I don't know about anyone else out there, but I have some guides, master teachers that they're relentless.
They are.
They
They will
do
not stop.
They don't let it go. They push, but they also bring people into your lives that help us move through that. As you said, my story, that I was very hesitant to teach some of my classes. If it hadn't been for Jason and some of the others here in the center, I was determined not to step into that. Between them, my guides and teachers, it was not going to happen. It just was not going to happen.
We didn't exactly let up on you either, did we? No, not so much. I would like to share and point out that one of the common denominators that is really obvious in the conversation that we're having is that we all had somebody to talk to. We all had somebody to express to discuss, to talk about what we're experiencing, to help each other, to bring new perspective and new energies to the forefront. And it's about the community that apart we can do great things. But when we come together and we work together and we all support each other, that's when things go to the next level and far beyond what we could have ever thought of on our own, right? Because it's those few words, it's that little bit of guidance, it's that little push, right? It's that guy that you know that has the connection, right? It's all of those things coming together. So it's a combination of all the different talents in the community, and I think that's what creates such a beauty at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, is that it's at every level. There's the higher level stuff going on, there's the development going on, there's the people just coming in, and everybody is comfortable in what they're doing. And that says a lot for the people that are here. That's a reflection of what's been created and sustained.
Well, we have to allow for each other, right? That's the key. Do we allow for each other and give each other space? And it's so competitive sometimes that we have to, step back and know that there's a bigger purpose than just us. And I think we're learning, as Susanah has mentioned many times, to play in the sandbox together and really love each other and be accepting. So it's awesome.
Well, this is a great stopping point for a little bit of a break, and we'll be right back. So don't go away. Thank you.
We offer an incredible variety of classes and workshops every month here at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. We average over 40 different programs at the center, and guaranteed we have something for everyone. Our programs are available during various parts of the day, during the week, and always on the weekends. You can check out our listing on our Facebook page, on Meetup, or check it out on Eventbrite. Just look up Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.
Welcome back. We're glad you're still with us, and we have a lot more fun things to discuss. One of the things that I would like to bring up is, what is the difference between a medium and a channel? This is getting very gray, and it's even mixing into what is a clairvoyant. If you go back to the traditional definition of a medium in the 1800s, a medium was always a trance medium. It took a long time to develop their skills, and when they were bringing through an entity, their consciousness disappeared and went somewhere else, to the point that when they came back into their body, they would ask the others, did something cool happen? What happened? Because they weren't there. In order to keep themselves safe, they normally tied into a spiritual being who was called their control, who acted as a traffic cop to make sure nothing bad tried to inhabit their body, and when the discussion was done, that the entity departed from their body. In traditional mediumship, they normally would define it as bringing through somebody who has died or somebody who has passed and is in the spiritual plane. Channels are a little bit different. Channels can be either trance channels or they can be conscious channels. A lot of people do conscious channeling where they may record it to save what comes through. They may type it. They may handwrite it. For example, the series of books Conversations with God were all channeled, where he wrote on just a piece of paper, Neil Donald Walsh. So that's one form of channeling. There are full trance channels, and they bring through stuff. And if you had to say categorically how are they different, trance channels versus a traditional medium may bring through other entities that aren't just dead people. For example, they might bring through ETs, they might bring through archangels, they might bring through dragons at the core of the earth. Who knows? They can bring through a whole lot of different consciousness. But having said that, a number of mediums today are going into that mode where the mediums will also bring through these folks. Another thing that you run into here, and I'm sorry to keep making it grayer, is traditionally clairvoyance. If you were in front of them and they were very clear, they might see other people around you who were in spirit and who had messages for you. Now, what's the difference between that and a conscious medium? It's hard to tell, because when you see somebody like a John Edwards or James Van Praagh on stage doing a gallery reading, they do not go into trance. They talk about a line of spiritual entities that wish to talk to audience members. When I talk to clairvoyants and conscious mediums about that, about what is the difference between what they do, not much difference. So it is getting gray these days. Now, Susanah, when you go into channeling, I don't believe that you're full trance, are you? So you still hear the discussion that's coming through your mouth.
I do. My primary gift is clairaudience, so I hear the messages coming in and I just relay or translate what's coming forth. And sometimes, the language might be a language that isn't able to express in an English way of speaking. And so I kind of have to stop for a minute and, kind of let the entity or the being know that's coming through, okay, we need to adjust this a little bit so I can bring it through, and then they will. So it's a consciousness. I'm aware. There are times when after the session is over that I will remember bits and pieces, more kind of the energy of what happened, but I won't really remember specifics.
Okay.
So I tell people all the time that if you have questions, ask them now, because once we disconnect and they leave, it's a done deal.
Yeah, and that's one of Dave's little footnotes here. If you're really serious about getting good information from the spiritual plane, invest some energy and time in it and get a little pocket recorder and record these so you can review them later on, because the time scale that the spiritual plane understands is not our time scale, and what they tell you may be true today or it might not be true for 2 years. And so it's good to update yourself on that and see how things are unfolding in your life.
I have a question for you. And just for clarification for myself and for others, when you say trance, that is specifically means that you're stepping away or you're out of the line of communication, right? You're
Right.
separate from what's happening.
You are allowing an entity to control your body and speak through you with their mannerisms. Now, you bring up a good point, because now we have conscious trance mediums where they step out of their body, they sit 3 feet away, they watch what's going on with their consciousness while they allow an entity to take over their body. And so that is another flavor on this now. So a true trance medium who leaves the body and they go away, they're very rare. I only know a few of them. Because that's just not how people these days are interested in developing these skills. And so when I use my skills and gifts worksheet with people and find out that they have a gift in trance mediumship, I explain it, but then I also say you'll probably be much happier and also feel safer if you are a conscious trance medium than if you're a full trance medium. I admire the people in the 20s and 30s and 40s at the spiritualist camps who were full trance mediums, because basically they just let other people use their body. They weren't a social participant in the seance. They didn't know what had happened when they came back, and they had to trust that everything would work well so that they wouldn't end up with some type of dark entity attachment that would be persistent and hard to get rid of. So I admire them, but those people are very rare now.
Do you think that's because we're evolving? We're
Yes.
evolving,
Yeah.
and so we're shifting and changing. So it's, I feel like it's easier to connect than it probably was 40 years ago.
Yes.
Right? Because we're able to do that. There's more of that flow, that connection, and so, and we're evolving, but being more more knowledge and wisdom that's coming in on what we want to do.
Yeah, a slightly different angle on that is back in the old days, mediums used to sit in a cabinet or a closet and they would emit ectoplasm, which was a substance that was somewhere between a physical substance and a spiritual substance, and it would come out of their body. And these were the ones who could actually manifest like a hand or a face, or in some cases a whole person in this ectoplasm while they were in trance. Several years ago, on a trip back to Camp Chesterfield and talking to some of the old-time mediums, I think that giving off ectoplasm from your body and then having it return back to your body is damaging to your health. I don't think that was good for long-term results for people. I think it was harsh on the body. So I think that's why we really don't see that happening much more.
Well, who wants to be knocked out in a closet covered in snot?
Yeah.
And then take it back in.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't want to hawk a spiritual loogie. That is not something that's on my menu. While I can see the benefit of stepping out of the way, but I think it's a combination of the things that you're saying, because to be committed to do something like that has that sort of reaction is pretty deep, you know. But in our space now, if you were, you know, oozing plasma out of your body while you were doing that, I think it would be difficult to deliver messages in a way that people could process them, right? Because it's such a different time now. But what validation? I mean, really, etheric snot, like.
Well, I've been to a number of seances, and those just don't really fit with a lot of people's ideas today. They'd rather do one-on-one sessions with somebody for an individualized message where they don't feel self-conscious. You know, if they bust out in tears because Uncle Frank came through and they never had a chance to say goodbye, that can be embarrassing in a group seance. I mean, it can be meaningful and it can be emotional, but it can also be something where people feel very self-conscious. So I think there's a lot to be said for one-on-one sessions with somebody who's a medium or a channel, who's bringing through, especially close friends or relatives, you know, with an emotional tie.
Mediums have an incredible responsibility, and they receive immense validation when they're good mediums, because the information is processed and there's an emotional reaction in front of them so quickly. But what I've recognized is all good mediums create healing. They create release of negative emotions. They create a space where people can say goodbye. They have the connections that they make are immensely powerful. But it comes with a life of servitude. You really are in service to the spirits and to the clients. It's a different way of doing things for sure, but they have a great responsibility in our community.
And I think when Jason's talking about a good medium, he's talking about an evidential medium that has the training and the means and the know-how to provide information that is validating, that is Uncle Joe, or that is your dad Dave, or your mom Sue, that it really is that person. They can say, you know, go into your attic, look in a trunk, and there's going to be a locket that your mom left for you. And they'll do it, and it's there. That's an evidential medium's really trained to take that journey or that path of that soul.
And trust the information too. So Dave, you explained the gray area for us. So how do we tell the difference? If we're somebody that's getting messages, how do we figure out where they're coming from? How do we differentiate what's going on?
I think number one, you kind of have to interview them and say, what do you call yourself and how do you work and what beings would you connect with? Because keep in mind, we have earthbound spirits who, frankly, they're living in the astral plane. They missed the bus to go to the spiritual plane. They didn't recognize that they should go for whatever reason, or they resisted the pull. And frankly, they're just as naive about spirituality as they were when they were alive. They didn't get any more smarts. They sometimes show up with a medium where in a lot of cases, not so much that they have a message for the person who's sitting with the medium, it's that they need a message themselves that it's okay to go, that whatever they thought was holding them here, it's, look, go to the light. It'd be better for everybody involved if you went there. So that's one type of entity. Some mediums will bring them through, others won't, because they feel that they're low vibration and it's not their time to come through. So that'd be one question. Another question would be, okay, do you just bring through dead people, so to speak, people who are in spirit, or do you bring through other vibrational entities? Angels, gods and goddesses, ETs, those types of things. I wouldn't just necessarily tell a medium, oh, if you bring those through, you're not a medium, because the definition of what a medium is has really strayed all over. So I think the best thing is to talk to them. What is your mode? Are you full trance where you don't know what's going on? Are you conscious trance where, yes, you step out of the body to allow this other entity to speak through you with their mannerisms, but you're still nearby so we can discuss it afterwards and your impressions? Or are you a channel where you hear it and you relate it to me? Is that how you work? Or are you a clairvoyant where you see them standing around me, you can communicate with them, and once again, essentially channel the messages back to me? I think this is one of the reasons now a lot of fairs, you don't see people putting up signs that say I'm a clairvoyant. They've all switched their signs to say I'm a medium, just because they can't tell the difference either at this point. So I think the main thing is ask how they work, ask who they bring through, ask their state of mind or consciousness when they're in the process.
So it's a combination of the energies that are coming through and how the person communicates and connects with it.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Because I know if someone came in and asked me if I was a medium, and I always say no, because yes, Uncle Joe might come through, but it's not something I've trained that I can guarantee your mom that has passed or your child that has passed is going to come through, because that's not my focus or my area that I have worked on through the years. So I will always say, there's someone else, because we have so many gifted people here at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, that there's always someone else that will be able to provide for them what will be more fully in their need.
And sometimes you might want to speak to Uncle Joe, and Uncle Joe's not the one that's going to come through.
That's right.
And so a lot of people expect that they come in and meet with a medium. They're coming in to talk to this specific person, and it doesn't work that way, because they have their will too on whether they want to show up or not. And what is your highest message, right? Yeah. If you really come prepared that I'm going to get the highest message possible that I'm ready to hear and be open to that, that's the best way to approach it.
I think there's one other thing too. I'll interject something. When a person dies, especially if, say, they had years of dementia, is one case, or they had a sudden and unexpected death like being run over by a car, some of those cases, when those people go to the spiritual plane, they are not psychologically prepared to start integrating with spiritual beings. And what happens with them is a process called cocooning, where they are put into a sham hospital, and as far as they know consciously, they're still in a physical body, they're still on physical earth, and doctors and nurses and visitors are coming to see them. Over time, they will psychologically get moved into a state where they can accept the fact that they're in the spiritual plane. They no longer have to worry about physical problems in their body because everything is perfection there. And then they can go out and start in the integration process, such as life reviews and things like that. So having said that, that's why some mediums will say, oh, your mother died 2 weeks ago. It's too soon. It might be 2 months from now, it might be 6 months from now, before she's in a psychological state where she's prepared to look at this reality that she is still alive and that she can still communicate with you. So be aware of that too when you're in a grieving process and you want to talk to the person who just passed. Frequently they aren't available yet. It's just not there.
That's great information. Thanks, Dave, for sharing that with us. It's absolutely wonderful.
Another piece that's often interesting, and I've learned this from listening to a lot of mediums and reading about mediumship and listening to interviews and that kind of thing, is that spirit has its own agenda as well, and it really is. There's free will on the other side, right? And the busybody ant that you had is still a busybody, right? Even when she's in spirit, she hasn't necessarily evolved through that or passed through all of that yet. So people's their personalities stay intact, their mannerisms stay intact, and that's often what people connect with. And that's a great way for mediums to be able to relate to people, like you say, to provide evidence of some kind that really helps people understand. Like, this guy's, his mouth is like a sailor, and they're like, oh, that's exactly who he was in life, right?
Yeah.
And he's still that same guy. So recognizing that it does take a lot of energy. So like what Dave is referring to is for a spirit to get to a point where they can come through and provide clear messages through whatever means that might be, that takes a certain amount of energy from the other side, and they have to prepare and be ready for that. It's not just I think I'm going to go visit so and so today. It's more of a process for them as well.
So my first experience with like a gallery type reading, this was when I was still in Texas, and this woman, she's amazing, but there was a group of us, and there was a large group of people, so she had a lot of energies around her that she was working on energetically, how to associate that this one coming through goes with this person that's here in the physical and all that. So it was
sort them out.
Yeah, it was. She first of all, she had us go around in the group and say our names, so she would get the vibration of who we are, and then she had to sort through all that. Well, there was one young man in the group, and he had Ku Klux Klan members that were coming through, and they were taking over. So like Jason was talking about, they still hold a vibration of who they were, even though in spirit they're not that anymore, but they were still coming through that way. And here I am in the corner. This is the first time I've been at one of these. And she had said in the beginning, and she said, sometimes the first time you've come, someone might not come through. She says she does her best to bring someone through for everyone. So finally she got through with everybody. Of course, I didn't get my little message. And she goes, there's something weird going on here. And she's like, I don't know how to really decide who this goes with or what this is, but it's kind of set on the side. And she goes, there's a hat, like an old time Southern lady hat, and a pearl sitting there beside it. I'm like, well, I have a grandmother that's passed, and her name was Hattie Pearl. And so
I don't get how those go together at all.
Yeah, exactly. And so
could you tell a story again? I'm really confused.
once Hattie Pearl came through, though, I had all these other energies that had passed come through with this. It like she opened the doorway, so it was kind of fun. But she's just sitting there. She goes, I'm not really sure, but there's a hat and a pearl sitting there.
That's awesome. I love that story.
And the grandmother was from Georgia, so it definitely would have been a Southern lady hat. So,
well, that's the beauty of the validation. Like, there's no mistaking that.
I knew it was mine.
There is no question that when that information comes through, that it is the real deal in a moment when it was supposed to happen. It's just that's why I say mediums have such a powerful responsibility to the people and the spirits that they serve.
They do. I agree.
And I'm in awe of their talents and their skills. I am a reluctant medium. Sometimes I'm okay, sometimes I'm not, but I don't always get to choose, and I have to be okay with that. But it's a skill set that is still beyond me, but it is a skill set in some ways.
I tell Spirit all the time, I'm like, I have enough going on. I know dead people around me. I'm good with that. I don't want to hear them. I don't want to see them. I don't want to deal with that.
But sometimes they just push through.
Sometimes
they,
they
yes,
do.
They're just like, we're coming.
Yeah.
So just
here we are.
That's going to be a book someday, The Confessions of a Reluctant Medium. Right? So, Dave, help us understand, too, what the difference is when we're picking up that kind of information that we've talked about that's shall we say, on the other side of the veil, versus what is going on around you. Because we all hear this term empath. And without dragging it out too much, how can you tell the difference? Like, how do you know?
Well, let's talk about what an empath is. We'll start doing this on these shows because a lot of people walk into a center like this. They don't know much about it, if anything. They're honestly naive, and you start talking about some of these different gifts, and they say, well, that sounds like what's been happening to me. I've been getting messages in my head, and I just thought it was something weird, or else I thought it was something everybody has, or those types of explanations. But an empath is difficult for a lot of people, and when you start describing it to people, they say, aha, that's what it is. Some of the characteristics are, the main one is you pick up other people's emotional energy and you can't turn it off. And it's unpleasant. And if you go into a place, I'll say probably the most hellish place for an empath is to go to Walmart on Black Friday. Oh my God. You have angry people, you have aggressive people, you have people who are looking for that gift and getting one of 10 that are on sale. And this poor empath is picking up all of those emotional vibes, and they can't turn it off.
It's making me sick to my stomach a little.
Most of us stay clear of crowds like that.
Now, I met one lady who I would say she's a masochist. She was trying to write a book about prisoners and inmates, and she was an empath, and she's going to meet prisoners. And it's like, man, if you can't put up your shields and turn this off, that is not where you should be. It's not for you. But I do run into a lot of people who self-isolate from crowds or any type of reasonable size party or social event, especially if there's drinking. Drinking tends to lubricate emotions coming out, and empaths become even more highly sensitized, so they don't want it. So if you come into the center and talk to us and ask for specific people, or just say, I'd like to learn more about this empath thing, we'd be happy to talk to you about it. And all of us have hip pocket techniques for protecting yourself, putting up boundaries and protective walls, however we structure it so that it works for you, so that you can get more comfortable with this. And in later shows, we'll be talking about the indicators for other gifts, so you can start discerning. We're going to be kind of like WebMD for budding psychics. You can just kind of go there and find out, which one am I, when something's happening to you and you don't think it's happening to anybody else around you. So we're happy to do that here. Well, I think we're about done with this show. This has been great. We're going to have a couple highlights of some of our practitioners following this, and we invite you to come back for our next show. And we've just had a lot of fun doing this. So thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Howdy, my name is Lisa DeLong, and I'm an animal communicator and an energy healer. I've been working on becoming a more accomplished light healer as I move through time. I like to help people with their blocked energy that we find on their body, and we can also tune into the frequencies that are part of their reality and help them move forward on their ascension path. I am a frequency healer, and what that means is that I can tune in to the universe's radio dial and tune in on your frequency and help you connect with your ascension path through this frequency. So we can look at what you are moving forward to, what energy blocks you need to let go of, and what your true gifts are that you've come to bring to this reality. I am here at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts the second Saturday of every month, so you can call in and set up an appointment with me. I will be offering energy protection workshops, animal communication workshops. I also do a lot of workshops with the Super 7 crystal, dragons, and crystals and stones. So look in the future newsletters for those workshops that will be coming up.
My name is Melissa Ravenstar. The healing modalities that I use to help my clients, my primary basis is a shamanic practitioner and an energy healer. I do body scanning for illnesses, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, also emotional cord cuttings when those are needed. I also do cellular release therapy for trauma, angelic Reiki, crystal healing, animal healing and channeling, and also clearings, including house clearings and entity removals. I am at this space every Tuesday from 10 to 5 p.m.
My name is Selena from Love Your Light. I knew I was special when I was a little girl. I used to walk around the house whenever family members were hurting or a sick pet, and I would put my hands on them to make them feel better. Obviously, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I just always had the drive, the interest to want to help people feel better. And I also, when I was a child, started knowing when people were sick and knowing when they were going to pass, knowing immediately babies, boys, girls, twins, other, and it just grew from there. My mom was also an intuitive, so was my grandma, so I was in that environment. It just developed and grew the older I got. I am blessed to have a number of gifts. I am an intuitive guide. I teach Reiki, and I'm a mentor. I help people discover their gifts and abilities. I do intuitive counseling. I do energy clearings, personal energy clearings, and space energy clearings. I basically just want to help people see their light and love their light. I am at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts on Thursdays. I'm here full day as a practitioner, so I have morning, afternoon, and evening appointments. I'm also a reader Thursdays.
Discover connection, awaken sacredness, become empowered. Join us for our show on Blog Talk Radio.